All right, we are here with my man Evan Stewart. We met a few years back with during doing a real estate deal. We didn't end up doing the deal, but he showed me a couple of houses, and I really got to know him as I followed him throughout the next couple of years. When he went into his next venture, which is the Obsessed Academy. I've been following him since we met. I was impressed with his follow-up and how the conversations went. It was different than anything I had heard before from other real estate agents. So ever since that time, whenever he showed me the property and how he showed me the property, I've been following him kind of secretly. And I'm super stoked to have this conversation with him because his new venture, Obsessed Academy, is really diving into helping people like me or bigger businesses succeed. And so, Evan, I'm stoked about having this conversation with you. Welcome to a Jacobus podcast.
Thank you so much. I'm glad that we can finally reconnect and do these things. You know, it's kind of interesting. This new normal, right? This new world. I mean, we're doing things a little bit differently, of course, right now in the time of COVID. But I really admire what you've been building as you've been embracing ways to give back to the community. This podcast is a great example of that. So I appreciate the kind introduction and happy to be with you. I really am.
Awesome, man. Absolutely. So give me a little bit of background. I told them, kind of the audience, how we met, but tell me like how you initially got into real estate or tell me how you led up to getting into business just in general. Cause I want people to understand your background and how you got to where you are now and kind of those qualifications, because I could sit here and talk all day long, but unless people kind of know where we came from, why are we people to give advice, right? So give me a little bit of idea of where you came from and lead up to, you don't have to go step by step, but just a broad overview of how you got to where you are now.
Sure. Well, yeah, step by step would take a while. I'm still a young man, but been blessed to do a lot.
How old are you?
Give a lot and work a lot. Well, I'm still in my 20s.
20s. Awesome.
So I'm 27. Yeah.
Sweet, man.
So, but in that time, I was born into a family that had two really big blessings. I had some good mentors, entrepreneurial mentors growing up. My great uncle was very successful. My father was very successful. And specifically as entrepreneurs. And the second, I was born into a home that was a household that was together. So that really helped as well from an upbringing standpoint to learn how to communicate, work with other individuals. And of course, from a mentorship standpoint, had a lot of good role models to look up to. So I was entrepreneurial. I had built a couple of small businesses. I say they're businesses. It's really just side hustles you do when you're growing up, right? So I had a landscaping company. I had, sold some electronics, did an electronic resale company where I employed some individuals in my high school as sales professionals for me. And
okay,
but the big pie that really elevated that I was blessed to work in was a real estate company where I, through the grace of God and quite a bit of hard work over the course of about 7 years, had grown from kind of this embryonic state of startup to what then became one of the top 1% in the state of Texas, multi 8-figure book of business, huge impact, was really excited to be involved in that. And so long story short, where I'm here now with OA, Obsessed Academy, Obsessed Conference, what we're doing with the Obsessed brands and then the other companies I work with is I found, and you've probably seen the same thing, right? I'm sure where you found that success is quite formulaic. But when I was building my real estate company, people would ask questions about, well, how did you do this? And how did you communicate this way? And give me some advice. And I found myself giving very similar or the same advice to different people in different parts of that industry and different businesses in different states. And I thought, okay, this is pretty interesting. Once can be a mistake, but something like that is a pattern. So I started protecting the intellectual property, the proprietary methods that I was talking about, things that I had learned. At the time, it was just coaching, but then it grew and then it grew and then it grew. And anyway, 2019 had an opportunity for another individual to acquire the book of business, made my exit, and blossomed into what we have today. So it's been quite a journey. Happy to be here. Like I said, I know I'm a young man,
awesome.
But all I've ever done in my life is work. And so I learned a lot as quickly as I could.
Well, I think you almost say, I know I'm a young man. Like, I feel like that can be a benefit. I feel like it makes it more relatable in this world, because on my last podcast, I was talking to a guy and we were talking about TikTok and some different media outlets now. And not necessarily, I mean, I'm definitely old for TikTok at 37, even though I'm on it. I'm not sure if you're on it or not. 27 is like the getting up there for TikTok, but there's so many young people now that are looking for different ways of doing things, not just going to college, getting a degree, and then getting, a job. They're looking for, okay, what avenues can I go and explore and see how I can be successful that aren't your traditional jobs. And so from a young man standpoint, being, 27, I feel like that's relatable to a lot of people. And so especially doing what you've done, right? Building your 8-figure book of business, then selling it, exiting, and then now starting another project or company or multiple faceted organization. And so that's awesome, man. I really do think it's cool. I love seeing, I feel young, but I love seeing like younger people succeed. And so that's really cool. And I think that now, since you are young, you'll be able to penetrate like that younger demographic. And the cool thing is you'll be able to penetrate the older demographic too, because I think that older people man, this guy's accomplished so much at a young age that they'll look up to that as well. I'm 10 years older than you. And I feel, and 3 years ago, when we met, you'd be 24. I thought, dang, like this guy sounds professional. The way he talks to me, it seems like it's been, like you said, like a formula, but it comes across very genuine. And so like that, I was like, I've got to, you come across, I'm sure, a ton of real estate agents whenever you were in the business, and 90% of them, like, oh my gosh, okay, cool. But for some reason, Evan, you stood out to me, and I was like, I've got to like friend the guy on Facebook, or I've got to follow what he's doing on Instagram, whatever it is, because of the way you came across. And so I think that being young, being professional in the way you are, like, I think that's a huge opportunity for you. So I think young is actually a good thing, more so than a negative. Well, I really, really do.
I agree. I think that it is beneficial to have a lot of momentum at a younger age. There's never, you're never too young and you're never too old to start. In my real estate career, what I found was that a lot of people indicated that lack of age was indicative of a lack of competence. And something interesting had happened, which is that you were always too young. Well, first of all, you're too young, then you're too old, and then you're dead. So I never believed that anyway. But it was right. Nobody wants to be a guinea pig. You're too young, and what they're really saying is you haven't shown through your labor that you're not a bad decision to commit to. People don't mind commitment, but they will not commit to bad decisions, and you have to prove that you're not a bad decision. And so at that time, I appreciate you touching on that penetration of the younger audience, because that's why I'm so diligently working on crafting the training and the procedures that have worked, because the narrative right now, especially with the younger audience, is A, if you want it bad enough, and B, if you post consistently enough, or if you just create content, that things happen. And they don't. And that's the thing, is that I'm not talking about content creators or influencers or anything like that. I have a friend that she's got, I think by this point, 2.5 million followers on Instagram, makes quite a bit of money just posting pictures. It's possible, but what I'm talking about is real business. I'm not talking about seed money to grow your startup because you have some idea. I'm talking about real business is formulaic. And the best compliment that you can ever receive is when somebody doesn't know that you're young or doesn't know that you've had that type of success or experience. And then they look at what you've been doing and then they're impressed by your results. I think all too often right now, the narrative, especially in the younger demographic, which I speak a little tongue in cheek because younger right now is really about under 30, 35, right, is that people want to show what they're working on instead of quietly work and then show the result. And I'm obsessed about showing the result. I'll work behind the scenes for years before I produce something worth speaking about, Yeah.
And that's interesting. You say that. I follow Gary Vaynerchuk. I'm sure you know who he is, but he said that same thing about having, having like somebody else has like the fanciest of the website, or they have this many followers, they have this many, whatever people that know about them or do business with them. Meanwhile, he's over there, he called it in the weeds, right? Just like working and working and working and working, and then not showing everybody what they're doing. But then a year later, 2 years later, 5 years later, it's boom, here I am. And meanwhile, the market share has been just gathered up. And now you're an actual presence, right? So I think that's spot on. So tell me about the Obsessed Academy. Tell me about, first of all, I'm very curious about why the name Obsessed, because that can be something that would be unhealthy if you're obsessed about the wrong things, but it can also be something that is like, I'm obsessed with being successful so I can provide for my family, so I can set up my life. So tell me about the naming Obsessed and why that.
Well, part of our mission is to create this paradigm shift to create a world where individuals are inspired and fascinated and motivated by their work. I just think you spend too much time in one area of your life to not be fulfilled, invigorated when you wake up and fulfilled when you come home. But the word obsession, it's funny that you touch on unhealthy, because that's what most people think of when they think of obsession. They think of this unhealthy. I think obsession is an all-consuming passion. I'll touch on the contrast in just a second. But the reason why I specifically went with the word obsession is because I believe that in order to actually win, really, really win, I'm not just talking about finances. I'm talking about, there are some people I know that they win in so many areas. Maybe they haven't won necessarily in the financial world. They're not multimillionaires, but they're doing amazing things. Mother Teresa is an example of somebody who didn't win financially. She didn't have much to her name, but she won from a legacy standpoint. So I'm talking, even Mother Teresa was obsessed, because I don't believe that obsession is that negative, that unhealthy. Unhealthy obsessions are their addictions, they're undisciplined. When you think on the news, it's a story about obsession. It's lust, or it's drugs, or it's all things we don't want, right, Sean? We don't want that life. But what I discovered is that there's two types, right? There's unhealthy and then there's healthy. And in short, the healthy obsession is where I want your audience to focus on for a second. See, I believe that obsession is actually a 3-part cycle. See, I believe that obsession, in a nutshell, is an emotion, a mindset, and a discipline. They're different stages. So an emotion is this revelation that we felt. You felt it too, right? It's not the skies opening up. It's a little gnawing and tugging where you know that I know I can do more. I know I can be more. It's that first stage of wanting. It is to want, period. It is to need, period. It is the revelation, that gnawing, that tugging on your soul. See, without emotion, we don't actually get moving. Emotion, movement. So it's going to move us into the stage of preparation, which is that season of the longest, right? Which is the mindset, and emotion, the mindset, and the discipline. So the emotion is that moment of revelation, and then we move into the mindset. The mindset is that stage of preparation. See, I have the saying, John, that you cannot expect to prosper where you're placed if you don't first take root where you're planted. And in that season of preparation, oftentimes we need to recognize that we're called before we're competent, and that's usually where we're building our competency. See, I was called to do things in business before I knew how, and that season of competency was where we met in real estate.
Right.
You know, and if you're listening to this, to your listeners, if you're driving, you're thinking, think for a minute back on your life about where you were called to, and your competency was built in your movement towards your calling, not that you were already ready to go and things just fell into place. Well, that's that season of preparation. So we have an emotion, which is a revelation, a preparation, a mindset, which is the preparation, and then it's a discipline. You got to stay disciplined, a long obedience and a forward-thinking momentum and direction. It's an emotion, a mindset, and a discipline. And the discipline is a stage of cultivation where you get to pluck what you've been working on. But the interesting thing that happens is you've had this moment, right, where you pluck and you reach just a moment, right? It's your first deal. It's your first big deal. For us, you know, a couple of things in real estate, and then with it was the first Obsessed conference. What is the very next thing that happens? You look around and you say, I can do this again. Yeah. I can do it more profitably. I can do it better. I can have better impact. See, that's why it's a cycle. It's because the emotion, the mindset, the discipline, it immediately falls back into the emotion, the revelation, I know I can do more, and then the season of preparation. So I believe obsession is working that 3-part cycle to produce obsession overflow. which is saturation, which is that legacy changing, chain breaking, name shifting, wealth shift. It is all the things that you've been chasing. See, all the people that are doing great things are living a life, whether they know it or not, they're living a life that connects with that cycle of an emotion, of a mindset, of a discipline. So that's why I called it Obsessed Academy, is because if we're supposed to change a global perspective of what it means to live inspired and on purpose, we first have to shift the narrative of a word people know but have not connected to.
Right.
There's so much power in obsession. That's where people need to begin, which is why we've built our foundation on that.
Awesome. So you touched on something that kind of stuck in my mind. One, that was an awesome breakdown, but two, you mentioned being called to something, right? What about the person that's not necessarily doesn't know what they're called to do, right? Maybe they're just out of college or just out of high school. How do you talk to somebody that's like, man, Evan, I love what you're doing. I'm following you. Things are great, but I don't have that business. I'm not in real estate. I'm not in, pharmaceutical sales. I'm not starting that. So I'm kind of lost as to what I want to do. And the reason why I'm asking you this is because I remember the day not the day I graduated, but the day I finished up with college. So I was on an internship, and it actually went about a week past my college graduation. So I was working, I graduated, and then I finished out about a week worth of internship afterwards. And I finished up in Washington, D.C. And on the flight back to Dallas, I remember just thinking and writing down, I didn't have a journal, but I had this little notepad. And on the flight home, I'm 24 years old, and 23. I write down, I literally have no clue what's about to happen next in my life. I don't know if I'm going to go get a job and work for somebody. I don't know if I'm going to end up in real estate. I've thought about a few things, but I didn't have a job set up after. I got a degree in sport management, which is essentially business and sports, which are two of my passions. But I was more focused on, generating a larger income than I was going to work in ticket sales for the Texas Rangers. And I knew I would not be fulfilled there. Right. So what do you, when somebody out of college says, Evan, I've been following you for 3 years, I just don't know. Right. I don't have that called thing. So where do you say, all right, are you try 50 different things because you're young and you can get away with that right now, live on somebody's couch for the next 5 years until you figure it out? Or are you like, let's align, or let's go down this path and do these things, and that will help you figure it out?
So that, first of all, thank you for a really great question, because that is a great question, because we're speaking in the environment of the young professional, but I think there's people at all stages of life that have this question. Even right now, you have people that have been doing something that they know for decades. And because of COVID, they've been furloughed, their life has shifted. You have people all over the world that all of a sudden are going, I have no idea what I'm going to be doing. And so, what I believe as a prerequisite to the question, to answer what you had stated, should we just try a bunch of different things? I actually say no. And the reason why, and most people say yes, I'm not dumping on that, but the reason why is it's very hard to know what you love if you don't go deep into things that matter. Because when we're trying 50 different things, we try all these different foods. It's like the brunch, right? You have all these different foods, and the plate of food is great, and you've got all these different things. But then I say, well, tell me about the middle of the meal. How is this one specific thing? It's very hard to pick it out because the flavor has been infected by the other flavors on the plate. See, it's hard to know unless you go deep in one. So I believe that you should, here's the qualifier. Ask yourself, what do you do effortlessly that requires other people significant amounts of preparation? Okay. I'm going to say that for those of you that are listening. What do you do? Ask yourself this question. What do you do effortlessly? Not comma as it relates to your work, comma as it relates to your spouse, comma as it relates to expectations. It doesn't have to be professional. It can be, I love to sing. It can be anything. What do you do effortlessly that causes most people, they can maybe do it, but it causes a lot of preparation in most people's lives? That is the path that you start to go down. So it's twofold. This isn't rocket science. You have to have a clear understanding of your goals. I think goals need to be set in 5 key areas: personal,
Hit
financial,
me with
spiritual,
them.
relational, professional.
Okay. Say that one more time.
Yeah.
I kind of interrupted.
Yeah.
Go ahead. Say that again.
No, that's okay. 5 key areas. So personal, financial, spiritual, relational, professional. Personal is you. How does John feel about John? Right? Financial, what you earn is just as important as how you earn. Spiritual, if you have a specific faith, it's time in that faith. If you're not a specific faith person, it's time in peace and meditation. Relation, and these are in no particular order of importance. Relational, it's your spouse, it's your friends, your family, that time. And then professional, how exactly do you want to be spending your time, energy, and resources to better the people around you? So you got to get clear in those 5 areas, set those goals. And then from there, think, okay, the follow-up question is not just how do I accomplish them? That's too broad. I hate that motivational advice because it's way too broad, because there's 1,000 different answers. You can make a lot of money as a drug dealer. You can make a lot of money as a business owner. Which one do you want to go down? Right. It is, how do I accomplish them in the path that I can do with little effort that other people need a lot of effort for? The reason why is, if you're not clear on your gift or your purpose or your calling or any of those ambiguous terms, you have to get clear on what you're good at, because often your giftings are shown through your basic abilities that you overlook because it doesn't require any additional thought. If that makes sense. Does that make
total
sense?
Yeah,
so
it makes
far?
Total sense. Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. And that's,
go ahead.
I was just saying that's where I would begin, is kind of that path of least resistance.
Right. Isn't it cool? Kind of as an aside here, that I think 2020 or whatever, the internet just in general allows you to do that a little bit more, because let's say you brought up singing, music, whatever. Let's say you're like, I can sing. I can't sing, but let's say I could sing. And before, if you could sing, you were either a musician or you went and taught music, right? Like as a teacher or whatnot. Sure. Now there's so many different avenues because of the internet that, and this, we don't have to go far down this path, but because of the internet, that has allowed you to, now you can coach somebody on singing online, or you can teach some sort of, or just start a YouTube channel about singing, or a TikTok. You mentioned your friend with 1 million followers or 2 million followers on Instagram. She maybe makes brand deal money or whatnot. And maybe me as a singer, I put out a minute video of me singing every single day with a brand associated with it or whatnot. And so like, there's actual ways to make money. And that, again, that's not necessarily your business and what you're referring to or talking about, but it is something it's an opportunity, because the facts are, not everybody's going to have this huge business. But if you want to be a stay-at-home mom and you can sing and put out 5 1-minute videos a week and make a little bit of side money, that's pretty good. Well, so, and go ahead.
Everybody thinks of I want to become a content creator, a business owner, and make thousands. But before you make the thousands, you make 1,000. See, for the vast majority of families, right? We're here in the United States, so I'm going to speak specifically to my United States, my American families. For the vast majority of American families, $1,000 a month can actually be an incredibly significant and helpful margin. For some families, it's salvation. For some families, it's nothing. It's like maybe a bottle of wine. But for the majority of that middle America, $1,000 a month is significant. And so the thing is, what I think is beautiful about this 2020 and the world we're in and the internet and all those crazy things, is that the ability for you to shift just those basic underlying things that we need, like security, financial security, the ability for you to shift and to earn with little effort. It's not that hard to find $500 or $1,000 a month online through consistency. Now, right. We won't go down the rabbit hole, but the bottom line is there opportunities are endless. It's just a matter of if you're willing to put in the work, because it all requires quite a bit of effort.
Right. So on that, leading into this next question, this has a million different answers, but if we can dwindle those down to maybe a couple, because I was going to use the word obsessed. I'm obsessed with finding out why businesses are successful, but I'm also, and I don't know why I focus on this as well, but why do they fail? And so what are some reasons that you see, because you're training people, talking to people, and one, they're say, Evan, I'm on the brink of failure. If I don't get something done, then I'm going under. So what are some tactical reasons why people fail? And because I don't want to bring up, coronavirus and say, okay, well, that killed my restaurant business, right? That's something that was out of their control, whatnot. But what are some reasons that you come across as to why people haven't had the success that maybe they should have or have the ability to have? They're a competent person, and all signs point to they should be successful in business, but they just haven't got there yet.
Yeah. I'm going to speak to something that might be a little bit controversial, so cut it out if it offends your audience.
You're good, man.
Coronavirus didn't kill your business. You did. Your
Okay.
business was sick. It was infected. Coronavirus was oh my gosh, coronavirus killed the business. Oh yeah? How long have you been in business? 9 months. No, it didn't. You were in the embryonic stage and it wasn't mature enough. Coronavirus killed my business. What were you in? A restaurant business. Okay. How often did you do delivery? Well, we didn't do delivery. Okay. Well, see, it's not that coronavirus killed the business. Yeah. It's that the business itself was not embedded in the customer's mind as a must have. And that's your responsibility and frankly, your fault. Now, I'm not saying that in the same breath, understand the compassion and the kindness and the love and the care that I have for the business. I know that deep down, there's a situation where a lot of people are hurting, but catch yourself. Coronavirus didn't kill the business. Maybe you were in a season where you didn't really have to work for your labor, so you didn't know how to fight for what you wanted to keep, and therefore when you had to fight for it, you didn't have the muscle memory, so you failed. That's the reality. That's the realistic, the reality. In regards to why most businesses fail, have you ever read? I'm sure you probably have because you're so well informed on these matters. But have you read the E-Myth by any chance?
I have not.
The for any you, especially your listeners, it's a great book. The fundamental principle of the E-Myth is that most entrepreneurs are not entrepreneurs in the sense of business owners. Most entrepreneurs are technicians. Gosh, I'm really good at baking a pie. Therefore, I open up a bakery. Well, maybe you shouldn't open up the bakery. You should just bake pies. See, the number one reason why most businesses fail is that they're not actually run by business owners. The ego, that's why our third core value, collaborate without ego, is important, because the business owner usually gets way in over her head. I was really good at making pies. Now all of a sudden, oh my gosh, I've got this whole bakery and I don't know what to do. Or there's an ego that gets in the way. I have seen, so many businesses fail and struggle and not grow just because the one that started the business is refusing to get out of his own way, get out of her own way, and let somebody else run the company. And so out of everything, the thought is, if the business is failing, you have to look at yourself first and think, am I black and white, just data, not emotion? Is this position through my labor being filled to the best ability? If it could be filled with someone else, something else, is there a way for that to operate better? And I think that having those discussions are important at an early stage, because, gosh, you might get the business to the starting line, but Jane Doe down the street, man, she's a killer CEO and she would kill it. But you've always wanted to be the CEO, and now that you started your own business, I mean, that's a huge problem, a narrative that frankly not a lot of people talk about, because I think it can be, well, again, I mean, it can come across as pretty brash, but I think that's the reality.
Oh, it can come across as like, you're not good enough. That's what they might think, right? And instead of, so you mentioned books. Like, I'm currently in the middle of a book called Extreme Ownership, and you're touching on,
I love that.
You're touching on a ton of those topics right now. It's like, you have to be responsible because, and this is maybe why I'm in the middle of the book, I gave an out to all those people that failed because of coronavirus or whatnot. And again, I am with you. Like, external factors do matter, but what you're saying, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, is there's always a pivot that you can take to offset something, or to make it better, or to just regain some traction, right? Instead of not doing takeout, now you do takeout and you focus on that, your marketing dollars or whatever. But extreme ownership is just literally taking ownership of everything that is in your, I'm gonna call it downline or whatever, like you are responsible for in your business. And it's really interesting that you brought up the coronavirus, and how that didn't kill your business, because that immediately clicked and said, dang, like, yeah, I've been listening to this book, but I didn't take I was giving them an out, those business owners an out, instead of saying, hey, you need to take ownership of what's going on. There's going to be external factors all the time.
Well, let's unpack that, because you are correct. I love Extreme Ownership, a great recommendation. Man, your audience is going to walk away with some good books from this session.
Yeah,
but
I'm gonna get E-Myth
for the record. It's good. It's good. E-Myth is amazing. I love it. For the record, I've never owned or operated a restaurant.
Right.
But I have a belief that I think transcends industries, which is that the transaction is not the goal of the relationship. The transaction is a byproduct of a mutually vested relationship. I think the killer was not Corona. It was that most companies are transactional over relational. If I were to run a restaurant, the first thing I would have done when everything started shutting down is I would have gone back through the last 90 days of people that were at the restaurant, and I would have called them, gotten some of the people, hey, you know what? The restaurant shut down. Well, 4 people on that wait staff, teach them to pick up the phone, baby. Hey, you know what, John? Yeah. I know that you came in last week. I'm so glad. Obviously, you know that things are a little bit different. So as a token of appreciation, I wanted to extend an offer to you and your family. We will do at-home delivery. We're able to take care of this, and this. And since you're a customer within the last 90 days, we're willing to give you 25% off your order. Would you be willing to, is there anything that we can take care of you for this weekend? Or you could start a subscription model. Hey, you can get a free appetizer with every meal. There are all sorts of things that you can do. You're already at a loss. Take a little bit more to keep the customers on there. But think, I didn't get called by any company, not one company during Corona. I got all the emails about how every single company in the entire world is navigating coronavirus. There are emails on there. I thought, my gosh, I haven't used these guys in 10 years. The reason why we moved is, and we're still here. Did we take a hit? Absolutely. Why? Because one of the biggest revenue pieces of our year is the Obsessed Conference, and it's pretty hard to stack a room of 50,000 square feet when there's a pandemic.
Right.
But the day after everything shut down, it was on a weekend. I remember I just finished 75 hard. I could finally go out to dinner. I had a margarita.
Oh,
I
you
loved
did
it.
that. Okay.
Weekend. And then, 75. It was amazing. But the day after we finished that was the day that everything closed. So we had one day to go out to dinner and enjoy ourselves. But then that Monday, I got my sales staff and we called every single person in our database, not customer, every person in the database. It took weeks to go through the entire database, every single connection. If they didn't pick up, we called back every single by the time over the course of a few months, every single connection, pick up the phone. We just want to let you know we are here for you. Literally putting our money where our mouth is by showing you that we're present, because we're on the phone, we're on the video call, we're whatever. We are here. Here's how we're here. Here's how we're providing resources. How can we be present with you and for you? And in the midst of all of that, there was so much just relief conversation. We had all great conversations with people, but the problem is businesses right now are too focused on the transaction. And I'm speaking to my new owners out there right now. If you can just take a little bit of time to furlough the immediate revenue for the long-term relationship, it's going to feel really odd and you're going to make less in your first 3 years. But over the length, that's where you create compounding, because all of a sudden it shows that the goal is to help you and help your life be better because of our relationship together. Not always, hey, John, I'm just trying to get in your wallet.
Right.
Dude, you're not going to pick up the phone if that's what I'm always going after,
Yeah. Well, yeah, there's no doubt about that for sure. It's interesting that we talk about, how somebody can adjust during these tough times. And you give a good example about, the day after you pick up the phone and you start calling the entire database, because that's how, whenever and just to give y'all, the audience, a little bit of context. So I called Evan. I don't remember what listing this was or whatnot, but I know it had my client was looking for a horse stable. And so I called him about the property he had. It's a beautiful property. And we met out there. He showed it to us in the rain. And then I got several phone calls after in follow-up. And so the reason why I'm saying this is because the follow-up, and we're going to talk about this, was incredible. And it's one of the reasons why I had to be like Evan Stewart, a little bit of background. Let me Google him, because the follow-up was different than I had experienced before, because there are a lot of times in real estate, and I'm guilty of this as well, where I'll call the buyer's agent one time. I'll get a little bit of feedback. It's really like, it's feedback that's very generic and bland. And then I'll say, okay, cool. Like, they're not interested, and move on. Well, I gave Evan some feedback on the property, and then I got a call back again about a week later, and then again about another week later, because he's just checking in. It wasn't over like beating me down in the face, like, hey, give me your client, this is perfect for your client, yada, yada, yada. It was, I'm going to call him, I'm going to ask questions, and I'm going to be of value to me. Hey, have you thought about this, or have you thought about that? And really try and work through some things to where maybe you say that one thing that all of a sudden is, oh yeah, you know what? If we do that, that will work for my client. And so follow up in the way you do it, and the intentional way you do it, is unbelievable. And so you talking about that with coronavirus, and how you guys called everybody in your database, customer or not, super important. So kind of shifting into a business retention, and coronavirus aside, let's talk about how you like have your business and then grow, and how important maybe that follow up is, because that's something that you can do where you don't have to throw a ton of marketing dollars out there. It's, you have their name, their email, their information, and you're just on the phone. Hey, Evan, how's it going? Thought about you the other day whenever I came across this, wanted to just reach out and touch base with you and see how you were going, how things were going.
So here, I have one rule. I use it myself. I implement it across every salesperson that works for me at any of my companies. Everybody, this is the golden rule. The golden rule. And the great thing is, it's simple, right? The golden rule, every single time. That's the first. Every single time, without fail, regardless of where it is, every single time you interact with a customer, a client, the community, that interaction needs to do two things. A, it needs to be client value driven. How does your life get better because of our time together? And B, it must reinforce your professionalism. Every single time you interact, it has to clearly bring value back to the other person. Here's the caveat. If they cannot clearly define how their life gets better because you're in it, or excuse me, if you cannot, then they cannot either. If you cannot clearly define how their life gets better because you're in it, they can't either. And then the second is reinforcing your professionalism. And so if you can go service-based follow-up, be solutions-driven. I remember that property. Do you know the story of how that sold?
No. Fill me in. I don't.
Okay. So that it sold through one of those follow-up methods that you're talking about.
Okay.
There was an individual. The client called. I saw, kind of saw it online, inquired, got in touch with the agent. She says, no, I'm in the car with him right now. Yeah, we're kind of maybe passing through the area this afternoon. He's going to take me to pick up. He's buying a new Ferrari. I said, okay. And the reason why I said, can you put him on the phone? Put him on the phone. And we had a conversation. I said, hey, this is why you need to look. Because obviously, if you're getting a Ferrari, then you appreciate the things that others can't have. That's why you need this, not the reason why you don't. And we should just at least have a discussion, right? Because you can't park a Ferrari in a trailer home. It needs to be here. Long story short, I'm being a little facetious, but that was a conversation. And then it ended up going through a dialogue where they came, they looked, they liked, they bought. And so that follow-up is clear. But if you're struggling right now in your follow-up, regardless, whether you're sales, whether you're owner, it's if you can clearly define, A, it's client value driven, and then B, it reinforces your professionalism, it starts to eliminate the need for you to call, quote, just to check in. Yeah. Because, hey, John, I'm just checking in to see how that dialogue is the most common dialogue, but it's really inauthentic. But if you can call and say, hey, John, I remember the conversation we had on Tuesday, and you know what? I was thinking about it. I remember your client saying this, this, and this. Went back to my clients, for those of you that are in a brokering business or business, I looked at the product, I looked at this, regardless. Here's what I took away from that conversation. Here's what I believe we can do. Do you believe that this solution would fulfill your need? See, that follow-up is much more impactful because you at least get data if they don't buy on how you can pivot and adjust. And with enough data, with enough years, you create profiles. So now you can know if somebody calls in with this, and this criteria, this is the most likely outcome, which creates scalability and forecasting and all that all that
Right.
crazy stuff. But that's the baseline of where that can begin, if that makes sense.
Sure, absolutely. So talk to me about tactical. Like how do you keep that data, right? Because you can't keep that all in your mind, right? Like where do you put that information? Where do you then go to reference it? I mean, obviously in my world and in most worlds, it's a CRM, it's a Salesforce, well, I use Follow Up Boss for real estate. Like you have to have some place to keep everything organized. Is that kind of what you're referring to before you make that call, or during the conversation you say, okay, I need to make a mental note that this person wanted a 3-car garage, or this person, was maybe he had a big deal coming next month. And so that was the objection he gave for why he's not going to the Obsessed conference, or, whatever. And then you bring it up next time. So where do you store all of that from a tactical standpoint?
Yeah. Yeah, a CRM. So you are correct. That is where you store it. CRM, it just stands for Customer Relationship Management. Mm-hmm. For those that aren't directly in sales, maybe you're not familiar with the term. It's just a system that helps you manage your conversations, track the data, see where it's gone. I believe that you don't ever delete anyone from your CRM, even if they're a terrible client. You need to know, because if they ever call back, you have to have history on what that relationship was. So the first thing you need to do, not some freaking Excel spreadsheet. If you're on Excel, I'm not judging, but by God, get off that thing. Because it's not scalable. Yeah. Get into a real CRM. We use HubSpot. You've got Salesforce. You've got Zendesk. You have all of these great options out there, specific ones for real estate if you're in real estate, specific ones for insurance. The bottom line is you need to get into a system. The reason why that's important is because one day you will get to a position, hopefully you'll get to a position where Jane Doe comes walking in as your new hire, and now she's got some work to do. Well, she needs to know where these conversations left off, just like you need to know. That's scalability. So yeah, you got to have some type of system, but then also whatever your methods are, if you're leaning into others' coaching, whatever the methodologies are as it relates to conversations, as it relates to objections, as it relates to how you communicate, you have to absolutely keep that as a biblical truth in your company. One of the biggest issues I see with a follow-up system is where the follow-up is spread between multiple months, multiple days, multiple people, and then it's diluted because not everyone is on the same plane, the same system. And then finally, as you're relating to where we keep that organization, that tactical, the best thing that I ever did was I had a recurring calendar invite on a calendar. You can do it in many CRMs. It's a reoccurring task to continue that follow-up and that conversation. I don't care if we don't have a deal. I want to continue the conversation because something might come to be. And it got to a point to where every day I was having a multitude of calls with people just to connect. Hey, even if we don't have a deal, hey, John, how can I support you? Do you have any clients that are looking for something unique? Do you just having dialogues and building relationships? So when it was time to do a deal and you pick up the phone, you're not a stranger. And there's power in that, especially for those of you in the sales game. If you're not just re-automating your tasks to touch base with pretty much everyone in your database once every month, couple of months, half a year, depending on the quality of the relationship, then you're probably leaving some potential on the table.
So, I mean, with that, are you a big networking guy? Like, from a standpoint, I mean, obviously right now it might be a little bit more difficult, not to say you can't do it through phone calls and different things like that, but are you hey, I'm going to go to this networking event. You never know who you might be or who you might meet. Do you feel that way? Or do you think, you know what, I can accomplish more by banging out phone calls, or I can, social media or whatever, which could be a form of networking, but ultimately, are you a network meetup type person?
I am. I'm going to say something that comes across as a little bit arrogant, but I'm at a point right now where I no longer go to the networking meetings myself, just with the way that we travel and speak and work with people. My best networking right now is coming when I'm speaking at conferences, when I'm touring, when I'm working with individuals, when I'm working with companies, and now that executive level. Those rooms are usually behind either you being an authority in the room, like maybe you're brought in to train or something, or it costs quite a bit of money. So the best relationships I ever met were behind the meetups that were $5,000, $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 events where you can be in the room with people that are of a like mindset. I'm not saying it's not valuable. It's valuable regardless, but you also have to create a qualifier, which is I need to start identifying where the people that I want to be like are and make my way to them as quickly as possible. the best way you can do that is behind actually putting up a little bit of capital to get into those same rooms. It could be a chair. Right. It doesn't have to be a mastermind. It could be a charity. It could be an event.
Sure.
So am I about those things? Absolutely, I'm about them. I think they're incredibly valuable. Yeah. Nowadays, a lot of my networking is as it relates to B2B executive level networking for my companies. But even right now with COVID, for those of you that are struggling to grow your network, grow your audience, host your own. Just host a free, you can host a group meetup on Facebook or on LinkedIn if you want to be professional. There are ways to kind of get around that. Nothing ever beats in person, but
for sure.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer in that for sure.
The conferences, and we can talk about Obsessed conferences as well, but or Obsessed conference, but those, is that where you would say from a networking standpoint where you meet a lot of those like-minded people? Because everybody that goes to, let's say, a Obsessed conference is there for a reason, right? And so that's an automatic introduction to the conversation, right? It's like, oh, what are you here for? Or what do you want to get out of this? Or, whatever. It's an easy opener. Is that where you feel like is a good start, a good finish, a good, because I feel like sometimes, and correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like though that a lot of time can be just as important as the information that you're getting, because in my mind, I tell my wife this all the time and other people, I met my best client, the one that's referred me the most business, at a pickup basketball game. And so I'm a huge believer of, you never know where you're going to meet somebody. Was that an anomaly? Probably, but you never know where you're going to meet somebody. So if you up the odds and say, I'm going to go to this conference where there's a lot of like-minded people, it seems like that would be the way to go versus randomly trying to go to some smaller networking meetings, which I do think are important, but finding a place where you can really dive in and meet a large group of people at once.
Yeah, it is important. Conferences are kind of like the gateway to that world of personal and professional development, but I met a lot of great people, great referral partners at conferences as an attendee. And then when we started hosting our events, I had a similar epiphany when I walked into the VIP room at the first Obsessed conference we did. Mm-hmm. And there was literally tens of thousands of dollars of deals being done. Somebody over here was taking a credit card and they're swiping for this. Somebody over here just bought tens of thousands of dollars of worth of tickets to this other person. Somebody over here liked this person's book and bought 2 crates. And it was really interesting because yes, the conferences, the meetups, all of that are important because fundamentally it gets people moving in a forward momentum in a similar mindset. Like if you're going to come to a 10X or a Thrive or an Obsessed conference or something of that magnitude on that lane, you're going to be around people that are already thinking relatively similarly, have similar missions, similar goals. And so it makes the conversations easier because the first wall to who are you? What do you want? What can we do for each other? That's already kind of broken. So now you can dive straight into the meat of it. Hey, this is what we do. This is what we're about, man. I'd love to connect. And you've opened up and through just your exposure with that event and being there with that other individual, you have permission just to continue to follow up and build a relationship right from the gate. And so I think it's incredibly impactful. Incredible. I cannot wait for conferences to open up again. I always love being an attendee. And it's valuable. It really is.
So tell me about Obsessed Conference. And not to be like a huge plug, but I do want to know more about what it is, why you do it. We've touched on that a little bit, but who it's for. I mean, I know one of the speakers, Rocky Garza, which we haven't talked about this before, but we were kind of acquaintances in college. He was a friend of a buddy of mine.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I know it. Right. So,
oh my God.
Pretty wild. So, we haven't touched base in a long time. But we would hang out and watch A&M basketball games together and, whatnot. And so we know each other, but when I was, looking on your Facebook page and things like that, I said, oh, that's a picture of Rocky right there, which is kind of wild. And so, and I've been, following him too. And so hopefully at some point I'll have him on here because I know he's a great guy and has good morals and things like that I really want to dive into. But so I saw he was one of the speakers, but tell me a little bit more about Obsessed Conference and who it's for, why you have it, all that.
Sure. The Obsessed Conference was our answer to, again, with everything that we do, to not finding the answers in the market. There's 1,000 different conferences out there. They're almost all just giant sales pitches. And I'm not speaking ill of anything, but we know that's the reality. Oh yeah. It's just, and me too. Like man, I don't pay, hundreds of dollars or thousands of dollars to get a ticket to a seat just so I can learn an opportunity to buy more. That's not an opportunity that's called being sold to,
Right.
which is cool if you know that's what you're walking into. But the bottom
Sure.
line was, I believe that if you're in the business of changing businesses and changing lives, then the best data is not an immediate transaction. It's a transformed business or a transformed life. And so we do a couple of different things differently. A, we only bring experts. You can't pay to play to get on our stage. People have tried. Quite a bit of money, and I turned it down. Why? Because I care more about the quality of the event than I do about the immediate transaction. Right. So it's people that are hand selected by our conference team that have actually done the things that they're talking about. So the people on that stage that are talking about building businesses have built, scaled, owned, and exited multi 8 or 9-figure businesses. One of my friends up there has built, scaled, and exited multi-$100 million company. And so real people that have done it, not just, I made $1,000 in Bitcoin, but real people that have done it.
Right.
That's the key. Little things like on the floor, you talked about the networking. We've got relationship liaisons to help introduce you to other people. Oh, well, this is a great sponsor. You should know. This is a great attendee. You should know. Oh my gosh, Sean. Well, this person here is in real estate investing. And because when you can walk away with those relationships, it's powerful. And then the third was, we've all been to the freaking beige conference room where you walk in and they've got the up lights and the little mini stage. I can't stand that. It's bland, man. It's bland. Nobody wants to go to that. And so, so we essentially, from our marketing and design team, we take another angle as we're putting together a music festival, like a South by Southwest, except it is personal and professional growth material, not a concert.
Not a concert.
You don't have them in boring conference rooms. We have them, this next event at the Bomb Factory literally was a bomb factory. Now it's an amazing venue. So we're always looking to create that next level experience so you can walk away with the tools you need to actually scale and grow, the network you need to be supportive, and then an experience that you're actually proud of and want to go, attend again.
Yeah. Perfect, man. That's awesome. Well, hey, so wrapping up, if there's, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 things that you could tell a business owner as far as like getting started or keeping it afloat, just some general advice. And we've talked about a ton already, but if there's one thing that sticks out in your mind that, hey, if I knew this then, or if I want to tell somebody one thing about how to be successful, I know that there's a lot. And we talked about, being formulaic and systematic, but what could be one thing that we could leave the listeners or watchers with that could really kind of benefit them?
I think the one thing that I would have done differently, knowing what I know, is I would have asked for help sooner from those that can actually give it, not those that are just selling it. And that's key. I'm not talking about not buying mentorship. I'm talking about those that have done it. It's not a sign of strength to put on airs and think that you know everything when your business is barely scraping by. That's a sign of weakness. A sign of strength is saying, you know what, Sean, gosh, man, my business is here, but to tell you what I need, I really need help with this and this. Is that something that you might be able to assist with? Do you know someone who would appreciate that product or service? Do you know someone who can help? And actually doing that outreach, because you'd be amazed how many people you say, you know what, maybe that's not something I can help. I did this just the other day. A guy called and was like, I really need this, this, and this. Is that something you can help with? I said, not really, but I know a couple of people that might be able to point you in the right direction. And I kind of moved him down the line a little bit to other relationships. Especially now more than ever, we need to be supportive, right? Friends keep friends in business, but friends don't know how to support friends if friends never ask. And so the one big piece is ask often, ask consistently, and be very clear on what you're asking for as it relates to the growth of your business, whether it's mentorship or help or customers. Because a mouth that's closed will not be fed. And it doesn't mean to be begging. It doesn't mean to, lose your dignity, but in the same breath, there is a time and a place to ask. And early on, I was so freaking arrogant. I thought that, I just need to show everybody that I'm making it. And then after I actually grew the business to a point of significance, I thought, how dumb, how silly was that? So the biggest thing, especially for those in the early stages, especially right now at a time when people really need just community, as simple as it is, I would just ask. I really would.
Awesome, man. That's awesome. Well, if people want to get a hold of you or check you out as far as the Obsessed Academy, where do they go? How do they get a hold of you so we can, have some people dive into that awesome content that you put out.
Sure. I appreciate you asking. Three best places. Me personally, evanstewart.co is a great site, evanstewart.co. Or obsessedacademy.com, obsessedconference.com. If you're in a stage where you know you can do more, you want to live a life that is inspiring, fascinating, motivating, and fundamentally you're tired of being motivated, you actually want results, then definitely check us out. Results are why we're in business, and praise God, it's how we've been able to help so many people during these times. So you can find me there, or just hit me up on Instagram at Real Evan Stewart, and I always try to shoot back if the message isn't spam. So
yeah, for sure. Awesome, man. I appreciate I appreciate you jumping on here. It's been awesome. So many good nuggets in there. And man, I really do think that you brought a lot of value to my listeners and the people watching. So I appreciate you popping on so much.
For sure. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, bud.